Rajan de Lahori boarded the second-class coach of the 8-down passenger train. He had been assigned the responsibility of pulling the chain at a specific point to stop the train. Meanwhile, Ramprasid Bismal, Keshav Chakrabarti, Murari Lal, Mukundi Lal, Banwari Lal, Manmath Nath Gupta, and Chandrashekhar Azad were aboard the third-class compartment of the same train. Some of them were tasked with capturing the guards and the driver, while the rest were responsible for securing both sides of the train and looting the treasure. As the chain was pulled, darkness had fallen all around. The guards and drivers were forced to lie on their bellies, and the strongbox was thrown off the train. The strongbox was quite heavy and sturdy. It was broken open with hammers and chisels. Except for Azad, all the revolutionaries involved in the Kakori train robbery were captured. With the blow of Ashfaq Allah's hammer, the sturdy strongbox was forced to reveal its treasure. The box contained a huge amount of cash, which was tied into a bundle, and the revolutionaries took the route to Lucknow on foot. Upon entering the city, they hid the treasure in a safe place. They went to the locations that had been pre-arranged, but Chandrashekhar Azad spent the night sitting in a park. As soon as morning arrived, the newspaper vendor of Indian Telegraph was heard shouting, "Sensational robbery near Kakori." The British government was rattled by this train robbery. The intelligence department was put on high alert, and surveillance was started on all those who might be suspected of being revolutionaries. After 47 days, on September 26, 1925, raids were conducted at various places in Uttar Pradesh, and arrests were made. Among those arrested, 4 were sentenced to death, 4 were sentenced to life imprisonment in the Andaman Islands, and 17 others were sentenced to long prison terms. Only Chandrashekhar Azad and Kundan Lal managed to escape arrest. In fact, the British police never succeeded in capturing Azad alive. It was widely believed that his aim was extraordinary. On December 17, 1927, after killing DSP John Saunders, Bhagat Singh and Rajguru were running towards the Dav College hostel, with Police Constable Shannon Singh following them. Chandrashekhar Azad was observing the entire scene from the hostel. He realized that Bhagat Singh and Rajguru had emptied the pistols on Saunders and had no bullets left. Azad's companion, Shiv Verma, writes in his book Reminiscences of Fellow Revolutionaries, "It was a race between life and death, and the gap between them was slowly closing. Shannon Singh was just about to catch Bhagat Singh when, before he could do so, a bullet passed through his thigh. He fell, and later died due to excessive blood loss. This bullet had been fired by Chandrashekhar Azad from his Mauser pistol." In 1931, Chandrashekhar Azad had a secret meeting with Jawaharlal Nehru at Anand Bhawan. In his autobiography, Jawaharlal Nehru wrote, "After the death of my father, a stranger came to meet me at my house. I was told his name was Chandrashekhar Azad. I had never seen him before, but I had heard his name 10 years earlier when he had gone to jail during the non-cooperation movement. He wanted to know if, in the event of a compromise between the government and the Congress, people like him could live peacefully. He believed that freedom could not be won solely through terrorism, nor could it be gained only through peaceful means." Freedom fighter and scholar of Hindi literature, Yashpal, who was in Allahabad at the time, wrote in his autobiography Sinholokan, "Azad was not happy with this meeting, because Nehru not only doubted the effectiveness of terrorism but also questioned the methods of the HSRA organization. However, later I met Nehru, and he agreed to bear the expenses for Azad and me to go to Russia. It was Azad's habit that whenever one of his companions, who knew him or his residence, was caught, he would immediately change his residence or, if necessary, even his city. This might be why, despite numerous informers, the police could not capture him for years." About a week after the meeting with Nehru, on February 27, 1931, Azad was sitting with his companion Sukhdev Raj in Alfred Park in Allahabad when a motorcar stopped on the road in front of them. An English officer, not Bawa, and 2 soldiers in white clothes got out. Sukhdev Raj writes, "As soon as the car stopped, we suspected something. The white officer, holding a pistol, came straight toward us and, showing the pistol, asked in English, 'Who are you and what are you doing here?' Azad's hand was on his pistol, and mine was on mine. We responded to his question with gunfire. But the officer fired first, and his bullet hit Azad's thigh, while Azad's bullet hit the officer's shoulder. Bullets were flying from both sides. The officer ran behind a mulberry tree for cover, and his soldiers jumped into a drain to hide. We took cover behind a jamon tree. The fight paused for a moment. Then Azad told me that the bullet had hit his thigh. He said, "You get out of here." Sukhdev wrote further, "On Azad's command, I looked for an escape route. On the left side, there was a summer house. I rushed towards the summer house, coming out from behind a tree. Many bullets were fired at me, but none hit me. When I crossed the road to the center of Alfred Park, I saw a boy riding a bicycle. I showed him my pistol and took his bicycle. From there, I rode the bicycle to Chand Press. The editor of Chand Press, Ramrak Singh Sehgal, was one of our supporters. He immediately told me to sign the attendance register and take my seat." Vishwanath Washbayan, who wrote the authoritative book Amar Shahid Chandrashekhar Azad, writes, Deputy Superintendent Vishweshwar Singh first saw a person whom he suspected to be Chandrashekhar Azad. Azad was wanted in the Kakori and other cases, and there was a reward of 5,000 rupees on his head. Vishweshwar Singh and CID's legal advisor Dalchand Kaur, along with their attendant Sanam Singh, went to check if the person was indeed Azad. They saw him sitting on the road from Thornhill Road corner, which leads to the public library. When they were sure it was Azad, they sent their attendant Sanam Singh to call Nat Bawa, who lived on the nearby Park Road. Later, Nat Bawa stated in a newspaper interview, "I received a message from Thakur Vishweshwar Singh that he had seen a person at Alfred Park who resembled Chandrashekhar Azad. I took Constable Mohammed Zaman and Govind Singh with me. I parked the car and walked towards them. From about 10 yards, I asked him who he was. In response, he drew his pistol and fired at me. My pistol was already prepared, and I fired back at him. When I was reloading the magazine, Azad fired again, causing the magazine to fall from my left hand. I then ran towards a tree. At the same time, Vishweshwar Singh crawled to a bush, from where he fired at Azad. In return, Azad shot back, hitting Vishweshwar Singh in the jaw. Whenever I showed myself, Azad would fire at me. Eventually, he fell on his back. Meanwhile, a constable arrived with a loaded shotgun. I didn't know if Azad was dead or pretending. I instructed the constable to aim at Azad's feet. When I went over after firing, Azad was dead, and his companion had fled. When Azad was shot, he was a BSc student at Bafik Nath Agrawal Allahabad University and was staying at the Hindu hostel. Later, he wrote that when he arrived at the gate of the Hindu boarding house on the morning of February 27th, he heard the sound of gunfire. A large crowd of university students gathered there shortly. Police, captains, and majors had also arrived. They asked the students to disperse, but no one moved. Collector Mem Ford was also present. The captains and majors asked for permission to open fire to disperse the crowd, but the collector did not grant permission. During this time, I learned that Azad had lost his life. Meanwhile, when SP Major was informed about the shooting, he sent armed reserve police officers to Alfred Park. But by the time they arrived, the fight had already ended. As they were leaving, Nat Bawa instructed that Chandrashekhar Azad's body be searched and then sent for post-mortem, and Vishweshwar Singh should be immediately transferred to the hospital. Upon searching Azad's body, 448 rupees and 16 bullets were found. Yashpal wrote in his autobiography, perhaps the money found with Azad was the same amount that Nehru had given him. The trees behind which people from both sides had hidden had bullet marks on them. There were also 3 bullet holes in the car that was parked behind Nat Bawa. Azad's post-mortem was conducted by the civil surgeon, Lieutenant Colonel Townsend. At that time, 2 magistrates, Khan Sahib Raman Baksh Kadri and Mahinder Pal Singh, were present. Azad had 2 bullet wounds on the lower part of his legs. His tibia bone was also fractured. 1 bullet had exited from his right thigh, another entered the brain through the right side of his skull, piercing the parietal bone, and the third lodged itself in his right lung after entering his right shoulder. Vishwanath Vishampain writes, since Azad's body was heavy, it could not be placed on a stretcher. As Chandrashekhar Azad was a Brahmin recruit from the police lines was summoned, and his body was lifted and placed in a lorry. Congress leaders Parshottam Das Tandon and Kamla Nehru arrived for Azad's last rites. At the same time, a lorry carrying Azad's body had already left. When Tandon and Kamla Nehru reached Rasulabad Ghat, Azad's body had already been cremated. It is said that Kamla Nehru considered Azad as a brother. After Azad's death, his ashes were collected by his relative, Shiv Vinayak Mishra, and brought to the city. A procession was taken out from Kedar Banda. A black cloth was placed on a wooden plank, and the ashes were laid on it. The procession, which passed through the city, reached Parshottam Das Tandon Park. Flowers were showered on the coffin at several places in the city, and a strike was observed throughout the city that day. Vishwanath writes in his book, the SID superintendent admitted that he had seen very few shooters like Azad, especially when 3 rounds were fired at him. If the first bullet had not hit Azad's thigh, it would have been very difficult for the police, because Nath's hand had already become useless. After Nath Bawa's retirement, the government gave him Azad's pistol as a gift, and he took it with him to England. Later, the Commissioner of Allahabad, who later became the Chancellor of Lucknow University, wrote a letter asking Nath to return the pistol, but Nath did not respond. After the Indian High Commission's efforts in London, Nath agreed to return the pistol on the condition that the Government of India would make a written request. His condition was accepted, and Azad's Colt pistol was returned to India in 1972. After a ceremony chaired by Sachinder Nath Bakshi on the 27th of February 1973, it was placed in the Lucknow Museum. A few years later, when the Allahabad Museum was ready, it was moved to a special room there. Every day, a crowd began gathering under the tree where Azad had died. People started offering flowers and lighting lamps there. The British government uprooted the tree, erased all signs of it, and flattened the land. The wood was taken away in a lorry and discarded elsewhere. Later, Azad's followers planted another jamun tree at the same spot. The mulsari tree, behind which Nath had taken shelter, still bore the bullet marks from Azad's shots. Part of Azad's ashes was also